What color were the original Hebrews?
I have told you that we don't know that for certain.
Then you can't believe for certain that Jesus was white.
Just a moment. God is white. Isn't it obvious?
Well, that is obvious, but we don't know if it's obvious that God is white. The images of Jesus that are on prison walls and churches throughout the world are not historically correct, because history teaches us that Jesus was born in a region where the people had color.
The first icons were painted in the 6th century. That's 500 years after Jesus died. So how could the artists have known the color of his hair or the shape of his face?
Josias has found that the face in the icons corresponds to a type of skull not found in Israel. The face of Jesus would have been closer to these Jewish skulls. They were found in Jerusalem and they date to the 1st century.
And if you look at this, notice how this is very long and this is very, very narrow. It's a complete different type.
We used the 1st century skull to get even closer to the face of the Jesus of history.
This certainly doesn't look anything like the images that one associates with him, and I think it's much more likely to be an accurate reflection of the majority of people who would have been around at that time.
Look at these telling images from a Jewish synagogue in Syria. They were painted in the 3rd century, less than 200 years from the time of Jesus. They're the earliest pictures of Jewish people in the world, and fashions back then changed slowly.
The kind of hairstyle that you get, it's short, it's curly, it's, if you like, afro in style, and this seems to be almost uniform in the way that Jesus is depicted there. It's unlikely that Jesus' skin tones were white in the traditional, as you get it in much of the traditional art, as you get it in Hollywood Jesus's. It's more likely had darker skin tones, and is much more likely to have looked something like this.
You have to understand the initial images of Christ in the Madonna, in countries like Poland, Spain, Italy, these are white Caucasian countries, worship a black Madonna and a black Jesus. These images were altered and changed.
I think you are suggesting that there's some pretty good historical anthropological evidence suggesting that Jesus just probably was black. Am I correctly stating your...
That's right.
Are you there, caller?
Yes, Phil. I just want to say that when God said he was going to make man in his image, he did not mean white, green, or any color. It was supposed to be spiritually like him.
Very good.
And that's what is important.
Yes, well...
No matter if Jesus is black, white, green, red, I believe in the Supreme Being, and I think that's what we all have to look at, that there's a Supreme Being,
but what
and
color
it doesn't matter what
color has Jesus been throughout your childhood?
White, and I think that's ridiculous because...
What color was his mother?
You know, who knows? And I don't think anyone...
A notable biblical scholar who explained one origin of African presence in the Bible. Genesis 10:1 refers to the sons of Noah as Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who themselves had sons after the flood. Genesis 10:6 refers to the Hamites as the sons of Ham, who inhabited North and Northeast Africa. The sons are Cush, which is present-day Ethiopia, Mizraim, present-day Egypt, Put, present-day Libya, and Canaan, which is present-day Palestine, Israel. The African presence is still visible in Israel today. There are thousands of African Palestinians who live in Israel with deep roots to the land, whose ancestors date back for centuries. I met with Ali Jaddah, tour guide, and the informal mayor of the African Palestinians in East Jerusalem. I asked him about his life and relations between the Afro-Arabs and the Jews.
As a black Palestinian, I am double oppressed by the Israel. First of all, they oppress me as a Palestinian. Secondly, they oppress me because of my color. Whenever I go around in the Israeli side, they call me Kushi. Kushi means nigger.
We have a little Canaanite boy, and he is with the donkey, and he's taking care of his sheep.
I am Canadian in Israel.
not tell the truth. They're liars. And they manipulate our history books. The history books are not true. It's a lie. The history books are lying. You need to know that. You must know that.
But the Bible also foretold that a day would come when God would gather his children back to the land of Israel. God is gathering his children home, and it is Christians bringing them. And it is Christians bringing them. That is our form of witness.
There has never been a more persecuted people, a more oppressed people. There has never been a more persecuted people, a more oppressed people.
And you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you. And now the people of God around the world are responding to this mandate as never before. This global prayer initiative is established with the support and participation of nearly 1,000 of the world's most respected Christian leaders, united with one voice, calling the church to prayer for Jerusalem.
It's God's direction for us. We come to the conclusion that if Israel is blessed, ultimately the world's going to be blessed.
The most important thing we can do today is pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
We need international help. We also need supernatural help.
Over 400 of America's foremost evangelical leaders, together in one room with a single purpose: to speak and act with one voice in support of Israel, the largest pro-Israel organization in the United States and one of the leading Christian grassroots movements in the world. That first meeting so inspired Christian leaders that just 5 months later, their influence encouraged over 4,000 Bible-believing Christians to converge on our nation's capital for the first Washington-Israel Summit. Christians from all 50 states came together at the Hilton Hotel in a passionate and unified display of support for Israel and the Jewish people. The timing was ordained of God. As Israel went to war in Lebanon, CUFI was boldly supporting them in Washington, and their support of Israel's right to the land by biblical mandate.
I can't resist to say it. I will be silent no more. Our times demand it, our history compels it, our future requires it, and most of all, God is watching.
All Christians who love Israel are invited to join. They can start by signing the Israel Pledge, which states, "We believe that the Jewish people have a right to live in their ancient land of Israel, and that the modern state of Israel is the fulfillment of this historic right."
folks don't go for this black Jesus at all. Been praying to a white Jesus all their lives. This is their Jesus, and no activist of the moment is going to come along and rip that imagery out of their soul.